Of course, Randolph Scott loathed him more than anyone. Randolph Scott was born George Randolph Scott on January 23, 1898 in Orange County, Virginia. He grew up in a large Gentile Southern family that prized discipline, education, and integrity, values which would later form the core of both his screen presence and personal character. His father, George Grant Scott, was a well-respected textile executive, while his mother, Lucille Crane Scott, was known for her refinement and gentility. Randolph was the second of 7 children, and his upbringing in Charlotte, North Carolina, nurtured a sense of quiet confidence and moral uprightness that would soon become core to his film persona. Educated first at private schools and later at Georgia Institute of Technology and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, he initially planned to follow in his father's footsteps in business or engineering. But fate and Hollywood had other plans. Success was not overnight for Scott. After serving as an officer in the artillery during World War I in France, he returned to civilian life with a new purpose. On a trip to California in the early 1920s, he became fascinated with the fledgling film industry. Tall, athletic, handsome, and with Southern charm, he was noticed by several casting directors. He began his acting career humbly, working as an extra and stuntman before landing small speaking roles. His early efforts were marked by perseverance and humility, traits that set him apart from many of his contemporaries. By the late 1920s, he found steady work in Hollywood and soon made the transition to talking pictures, where his deep, resonant voice gave him an immediate commanding presence. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, Randolph Scott's career flourished. He had appeared in a variety of genres from comedies to dramas. But it was the Western that truly made him a legend with such films as The Last of the Mohicans, 1936, Western Union, 1941, and The Desperado, 1943. Scott became the embodiment of the archetypal Western hero, stoic, honorable, and unbending in the face of adversity. His characters reflected a sense of morality consonant with decency and courage, mirroring his own real-life demeanor. Unlike many of his peers, Scott did not get caught in the excesses that celebrity status often affords. He carried a reputation for professionalism, quiet humility, and staunch commitment to his craft. His collaboration with director Bud Boetticher during the 1950s resulted in some of the finest westerns ever made, including 7 Men from Now, 1956, Ride Lonesome, 1959, and Comanche Station, 1960. These films, now considered classics, painted Scott as an action-oriented man haunted by past regrets, yet guided by an unshakable moral compass. Scott's influence extended well beyond his final film appearance in Ride the High Country. Wayne was a showman, Scott said, and I was a craftsman. There's a difference. Wayne's brand of heroism felt theatrical, almost exaggerated. 1962, directed by Sam Peckinpah. In this film, he played the role of an aging lawman struggling to uphold his principles in a changing world, a role that seemed to mirror his own graceful exit from Hollywood. Upon his retirement, he was at the height of his dignity, choosing to leave the screen on his own terms. He invested wisely in real estate and business ventures until he became one of the wealthiest actors of his era. Still, with all his material wealth, he remained modest, grounded, and focused on his family and faith. Randolph Scott was married twice during his lifetime, and each union revealed different facets of his personality, one epitomized by high society and the other by quiet domestic contentment. His first marriage came in 1936 to heiress Marion Dupont, with a family name that equaled pride in American industrial and social circles. Marion was the daughter of William Dupont Sr., part of the wealthy and highly influential Dupont dynasty and the great-granddaughter of Eleuthère Irene Dupont, the French-born chemist and entrepreneur who founded EI, Dupont and Nemours and Company, one of the most powerful industrial corporations in American history. Scott married into a world of inherited wealth and old money privilege profoundly different from his modest upbringing in North Carolina. Marion Dupont herself was a fascinating, accomplished woman, an independent, strong-willed equestrian with a deep passion for horse breeding and racing. She owned Montpelier, the historic Virginia estate, once a home of President James Madison, and she developed it into a first-class horse breeding and training facility. Prior to her marriage to Scott, Marion had been married to George Somerville, a Virginia sportsman, and curiously, Randolph Scott had acted as best man at their wedding. This strange coincidence adds an unusual twist to their later relationship, suggesting perhaps that their bond grew out of friendship relatively gradually and surprisingly into romance. Yet, despite all the glamour that surrounded their union, the marriage between Scott and Marion Dupont was not destined to last. Their worlds, though both privileged, were as different as night and day. Scott, at that time an emerging Hollywood star, was intent on pursuing an acting career in California, while Marion was deeply immersed in her equestrian pursuits and the social traditions of the East Coast. Geographical distance and lifestyle often separated them. It ended in divorce in 1939, just 3 years after the wedding. Although childless, the separation seemed friendly. Curiously enough, Marion retained the name Marion Dupont Scott throughout her lifetime, having kept his surname almost 5 decades until her death in 1983. This decision, which endured until her death, perhaps reflected a lingering affection or regard between the two, or simply her desire to retain a name that had come to define her public identity within the world of horse racing and philanthropy. Randolph Scott found lasting happiness in his second marriage after several years of bachelorhood. In 1944, he married Patricia Stillman, a beautiful actress 21 years his junior. Patricia had briefly appeared in films in the early 1940s, but after marrying Scott, devoted herself primarily to family life. That relationship contrasted strongly with Scott's earlier, more socially strategic marriage to Marion Dupont. This time, the marriage seemed rooted in genuine affection and shared values. The couple settled into a comfortable and enduring domestic life, shunning much of the Hollywood spotlight that so often consumed celebrity marriages of the era. In 1950, Randolph and Patricia expanded their family by adopting 2 children, a daughter named Sandra and a son named Christopher. Scott, who had built his screen image as a rugged and stoic Western hero, was by all accounts a devoted and gentle father. Friends and colleagues often remarked on the warmth of his home life and the strong bond he shared with his wife and children. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Scott had managed a marriage that was both stable and free from scandal and public turmoil, and his family life was to become one of the cornerstones of his later happiness. The marriage of Randolph and Patricia was to last for 4 decades until his death in 1987, and it was one of Hollywood's quieter success stories. Removed from the brilliant lights of the film industry, life at the Scotts' residence remained serene, dividing their time between their Beverly Hills home and the ranch outside Santa Barbara. On this farm, Randolph could give rein to his lifelong passion for horses and open countryside. In this long-lasting liaison, Scott discovered the type of stability and calmness that had evaded him in his first marriage, a quiet home world that was reflective of the dependable, strong movie characters he had played so often. In the world of Hollywood westerns, few figures loomed as large as Randolph Scott and John Wayne. Both were towering icons of rugged masculinity, each showing a different kind of heroism on screen. Behind the scenes, however, the truth was not as simple. While fans may commonly perceive 2 stars of such similarity to share mutual respect with one another, the truth is considerably different. Randolph Scott, that refined Southern gentleman with polished manners and a discreet air of dignity, detested John Wayne. Whatever their rivalry, it went much deeper than career competition. The differences were in personality, in values, and in the way each man viewed the art of acting and the cowboy code. "I never cared for the man," Scott said once, candidly. "He represented everything in Hollywood I didn't admire." Scott had always taken pride in restraint, on screen and off. His performances were measured, deliberate, quietly powerful. He had no need to shout or swagger to express strength. John Wayne was all bravado, boisterous,